You know, I used to be terrified of binding. I would avoid any project that called for binding just so I didn't have to do it because I wasn't good at it. And then one day I decided this is silly. I should just learn how to do binding. And I tried a bunch of different methods. And here's the thing, you've got to find the method that works best for you. And don't let anybody tell you you're doing it wrong because it doesn't matter how you apply your binding. You should apply binding in whatever way works best for you and however you want to do it. Now, this is the method that works best for me. This is what I use all of the time. It doesn't matter if I'm binding a craft project or a quilt. I do this method no matter what. I'm going to use glue too. Can you believe it? Yep, glue basting. I love it. It makes such a difference in the finished look of your project. So let's make some binding together. So I've got 2 strips of fabric here because I've got my project already quilted, ready to go. And I'm just gonna make a little hot pad for my kitchen. Won't this print be cute in my kitchen? I think so. But it needs binding on the edge. So I've quilted it, I've squared it up, making sure all your edges are nice and neat and even. And now we need to make the binding. We're not working with bias binding here. Bias binding, I tend to use it mostly when I'm stitching curves or, rounded corners or edges. If I'm just doing straight up mitered corners, like I'm going to do today, you can just cut regular strips of fabric. You don't have to do anything fancy. You want to have enough binding to go all the way around your project, miter your corners, and you need a little bit of overlap for where you're going to put your binding together. So I always do the length plus the width, and I add 10. It's usually more than I need, but I would rather have a little bit extra than not enough. You got to cut your strips and figure out how many strips that you need. To put your binding pieces together, you're going to lay them just like this. So your right sides are together. I know that's hard to tell with a solid, but I've got the right sides facing each other, and we are going to sew on a diagonal from one corner to the other. So it's a 45 degree. So you can go ahead and mark it with a pen. That might make it a little bit easier to see as you're stitching. We're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch right down. Just go ahead and stitch along that line. And this is to join your 2 binding strips or however many binding strips that you might have for your project. Okay, you're going to just trim off that excess. You want to leave a 1/4 inch here. I like to press those seams open, or you can press them to one side. I like how it distributes the bulk evenly though. Otherwise one side is a little bit thicker than the other. So go ahead and press those seams open. And then you're going to simply fold this in half, matching up your raw edges to make your binding strip. Now there are some tools and gadgets out there that I do like to use that make this easier. But for starting out, I just want to show you the basics. That you can do this with just your iron and an ironing board. You don't need anything fancy. But we'll get into the tools and gadgets another time. Because as you learn and the more you do this, the easier it gets. And then you might start to think, okay, now I'm doing binding a lot. I want some tools. I want some fun little gadgets. Okay, so this is our binding strip. Now, at the beginning, for this method, what I like to do is draw a 45 degree line. I'm lining this up on the edge of my binding, and I'm lining it up with the corner here. So I've got my 45 right there. That's my guide. And then I'm going to draw a line right here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to press it. I'm going to just trim, leaving about a 1/4 inch. You just want that raw edge tucked in, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. Press. Just to make sure it all lays nice and flat when we get started. So then we're going to take whatever it is we're adding our binding to. Now I'm adding the binding to the front side. You can add it to the back side. Remember, there are no rules. Do whatever works best for you. And I'm going to start right about in the middle of my project. I don't clip or pin my binding. I'm just doing this to show you how we're going to get started. So we're going to go to the sewing machine We're going to start sewing this in place. Now I've got a 1/4 of an inch presser foot on my machine here, and this is what I prefer to use, but you want to sew with a 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and you want to be consistent. So to start with this method, we're making a little, what I like to call, binding pocket. So we're going to open the binding up and start up at the top and stitch down 2 to 3 inches, okay? And then stop. So it looks like that. And then just close your pocket. And we're going to pick back up right about where we left off. It doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to stitch to the edge, and we're going to stop about a 1/4 of an inch before the edge of this project here. Doesn't have to be exact. Okay, then you're going to lift your presser foot up, keep your needle in the down position, and pivot towards that outer corner and sew off the corner. Just like that. Don't need a back stitch or anything. So you see how it created those little stitches? Those are your guide for your miter. So then you're going to fold this back, and you're folding at a 45-degree angle, but those stitches kind of help keep it in line. Then you're going to fold it back down along it on itself. So you've got that 45 underneath, and then this nice square fold up at the top, and we're going to put it back under. Still using that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, we're starting right at the top, and we're going to stitch and do the same thing at the next corner. Lift your presser foot up, keep the needle down, and stitch off the corner. And then take it out, and then again, fold back your corner at a 45, then line up the top of your fold with the raw edge of your project, and fold it down and stitch to the next corner. And do the same thing, fold it back, fold it down on itself. Don't worry about where your join ends up. And last time, fold it back, fold it down on itself, and now we're going towards the little pocket that we made. So go ahead and just start stitching the same way. Be aware of where your pocket is, okay? And now we're going to open this up. So we want to tuck in. We've got excess here. We've got more than we needed, which is generally what I like to have. So cut this off at an angle, just slightly before those stitches, because that's how much you have open. And tuck that into your little binding pocket, and sew to where your stitches started on the outside. So now we have stitched the binding on all the way around our project. What I like to do is press it all open, but I like to press with my iron because I think it gives a nice, clean, crisp edge, and I just like how that looks when I'm done. Avoid your corners at this point. Don't worry about pressing those down. Now what we're going to do is bring this along to the other side. So what we want to do is bring it over, and we want to cover up those stitches where we stitched the binding on from the front side. Now, you can clip, you can pin. I like to glue baste. Now, this is a temporary basting glue. If you wash your project, the glue will wash out, but I don't typically wash all these things. I'm just using a little bit of glue along the edge. You don't need a ton. Sometimes I will use my stylus if I need to help get my fingers in there. You're probably going to get a little glue on your fingers. It's not a big deal. Now I like to do the top and the bottom and then the sides, or vice versa. And I'll show you why. So you're going to press this down onto the glue. Then you're going to use your iron to heat set the glue. You want to go all the way out so that your corners lay nice and flat. The reason I like to do this on the top and the bottom and then the sides, or the sides and then the top and the bottom, is that way you get a nice even corner on both sides. So your corners all lay the same direction. So we're going to flip this around, do the same thing at the top. You don't need a lot of glue, and I put it above my stitching line. And just pull it over. Just press it into place. It only takes a few seconds. And what the iron does, it's heat setting the glue, it's drying the glue. So your glue, that glue is not going to gum up your needles. You guys have been doing this for years. I've never once had an issue with any glue gumming up my needle. Okay, so now you can see how it's laying nice and flat here and here. So now we're going to flip it over and we're going to go this way and then do the bottom side. And I like to add just a little bit of glue here where the binding is going to cover itself, just so it holds it in place nicely while we're sewing. So far, I haven't really gotten even much glue on my fingers. For me, it depends on the project. You want to make sure your corner lays nice and flat. And this glue does dry clear, so if you get a little bit of excess, it will dry clear and you won't even see it. Okay, so now you can see we've got the binding pressed and glued in place. So we don't have to worry about pins or clips getting in our way while we're trying to sew this in place. And look at how nice the front side looks. Now, there are two different ways you can stitch, actually three. You can stitch this by hand if you prefer. If you don't want to do any hand stitching, which that's me, I'm not a hand stitcher as far as this type of hand stitching goes. Embroidery, I'll do it all day, but not hand stitching binding. So you can either stitch in the ditch on the front side, which is, this is the ditch where your binding meets the project right here. So if you stitch in the ditch and if you folded it over on the side, where on the other side of your stitching, you know, because we covered up those stitching lines, it should grab nice and evenly all along the back side. And I can tell by looking at it that everything is laying nice and flat as it should. It would grab all of my edges. Or you could stitch on the back side right along the very edge of your binding, and you would see it on the front side. You should have stitches right along this outside edge. I'm going to stitch on the back side. Stitching in the ditch is great too. Again, there are no rules. You do what works best for you. And if you're new to binding, do this on a practice project a couple of times just till you get the hang of it. See what method you like best. And also, because I'm stitching on this very outside edge, I'm not stitching in the glue, but you totally can. And like I said, it's not going to gum up your needle. Right here. So now you can see we have stitched right along that outside edge. Looks nice, neat, and straight. And on the other side, because I used a color thread for my bobbin that matched my project, you can see the stitching, but it's very minimal that you can see it. all about personal preference. So take some scrap fabric, practice, do it a couple of different ways, see what works best for you, see what's easiest for you, and how you like the finished look. You can try whatever method you want. This is what works for me. This is what finally made binding stick and made me actually enjoy binding my projects instead of dreading it. So I hope this was helpful. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow along. We've got a lot more tutorials coming up for you guys, and we love to see you hit that follow button and join us in these fun little sewing adventures. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and we'll be back soon with another fun video.